Welcome everyone to this session, Reproductive Autonomy. It's a We-sponsibility. I'm delighted to be joined and to have this be a part of this series that Ogilvy Health is putting on to talk about and tackle tough issues and how we can move forward. Before we begin, I am joined by esteemed panelist, Elaine Lisner. She is the founder of the Parsonage Foundation, one of the few foundations conducting research on male contraceptives. The Parsonage Foundation has recently turned over the development of its non-hormonal, long-acting male contraceptive, Vasogel, to the new social venture, Next Life Sciences. Elaine was the founder and director of the Male Contraception Information Project to increase awareness about non-hormonal male contraception and convey the public's demand to policymakers. Her publications include Frontiers in Non-Hormonal Male Contraception, a call for research. And the Foundation's work has been featured in Scientific American, BBC News, New York Times, and the Wall Street Journal. We're also joined by Catherine Atkinson. She is the Chief Commercial Officer and leads the commercial organization for EvoFem Biosciences, a predominantly female-run company. She has had a long history serving as an executive leader in the biotech industry, which has historically been dominated by men. In this capacity, she has had a front row seat to gender inequalities that exist both in the workplace and in healthcare. Kevin Shane is the Male Contraceptive Initiative's Marketing and Communications Director, leading the organization's advocacy and outreach effort, and he leads outreach and communications efforts to help the organization achieve its vision for reproductive autonomy for all. Kevin is advancing efforts to understand the public's needs, perspectives, and understanding for reproductive health to educate them about developments in the sector, and he offers a fresh perspective on the relevant issues and insights from the educational work. Welcome.
Thank you.
So,
Quite the introduction.
Yeah. We have some great people here. Thank you for being here with us today. I think many of us can remember the morning after we really just started to digest what happened in our country with the overturn of Roe v. Wade. And everyone has a reaction, no matter where your leanings are. We want to kind of drive the conversation to what does this mean for our society? Where do we go from here? And really put it in the context of, beyond politics, that this is a public health issue. This is a societal issue. And really want to just, as we saw in the video, we've been fighting for women's rights and progress for a very long time. Our country has been very proud of the work that we've done and have been a model. So as we reflect on where we've come, and now, it's the 50th anniversary of Roe v. Wade in 2023, what were your reactions? And what do you see as the bigger impact of the decision that was made? And I'll start off with Catherine.
Well, we were shocked. And, you follow the news, you hear, you read, you think, it's not really going to happen. It really can't happen. This is 2022, and it happened. So we were flabbergasted. And, what happened to our company is you saw our stock take off because everybody thought, well, access to contraception is going to be very important. Doesn't matter which way you lean, right? No matter how you believe or what you feel, the only way to really prevent abortion is to give women access to contraception. And then you see legislators and you see a Supreme Court justice then say, hey, we don't even need to provide access to contraception as a right in America anymore. And it was unbelievable. And then the turn of events with VCs backing off and saying, maybe we shouldn't fund until the political landscape, it kind of dies down a little. Let's see what's going on. And so it left us truly flabbergasted that in this day and age, we were going through this again. That was what was happening for us.
Thank you. And Elaine and Kevin, you come at this from a very unique perspective, right? A lot of times, reproductive health and contraceptive has fallen on women. Mm-hmm. And so talk to me about your perspective?
Absolutely.
And what does reproductive autonomy mean to you?
Oh, that's a great question. The mission statement, the vision statement for MCI is reproductive autonomy for all. So when we were equally shocked, obviously, when the Dobbs decision came down and Roe was overturned, mainly and primarily because it's on both sides of the political aisle, the majority of people are in support of abortion rights. So it's contrary to what, in a representative democracy, it's kind of shocking that the majority opinion is just ignored. So for us, years ago when I first joined MCI, by virtue of the research that we're funding, nothing is abortive. So we would always kind of skirt the line of saying, well, we're in support of family planning and all these things, but really when Roe was overturned, we just took a hard stance as an organization saying this is just fundamentally wrong. And for us, when you look at the term reproductive autonomy, like the ability to do what you want with your reproduction, irrespective of what gender you are. Currently, no one has reproductive autonomy. So men only have condoms and vasectomy for their contraceptive methods, which puts the onus of avoiding unintended pregnancy on women. So women have to take something to avoid an unintended pregnancy. So the way we look at our efforts in the methods that we're funding the development of is really bringing that equity and that parity to allow women as well to say, you know what, I'm not going to take contraception, and I'm still going to benefit from it. So trying to reframe how we view contraception from a user perspective to a beneficiary perspective, because everyone benefits from contraception. So that's really where we come at it, is trying to say, like, listen, we talk to men, we talk to women, we talk to non-binary people as well, and everyone wants better control over their family planning goals. So that's what we look at, is we need to provide, whether it's educational resources or actual products that empower people to do whatever they want with their family plan, to achieve their family planning goals, no matter what they are. And it's none of my business what that is. So as a funder, it's like, here are the products, we're going to empower you to do what you want, and we're just going to step away, and that's how we view our role and the role of other funders in the space.
And Elaine, you've been in this space for quite some time and talking about these issues for a long time. How did you respond? But also, what has the opportunity for reproductive and contraception, what has it afforded women in this country? And what are you worried about?
Yeah, so we were not shocked, and I know everybody who said they were shocked also had a part of them that was like, oh yeah, here we go. Yeah. But I have colleagues who are leading the company that brought the first affordable generic abortion pill, medication abortion pill to market to go up against the monopoly provider who was charging Planned Parenthood $100 a set of pills. So pretty much was hearing on the inside like, hey, this is happening. It's hard to see these backslidings in terms of, I mean, I'm a Gen X, so I didn't fight for these rights like women 5 or 10 years older than me did, but I've grown up with them as a given, and as have women younger than me, and to see that taken away, and just the basic ability to plan your career, especially for lower income women, to not have to take days off work and drive 2 states over and find childcare, and just basically planning your life, family planning. And we transfer that, as Kevin was saying, to men, that when I founded the Male Contraception Information Project in the 90s, which was kind of before its time, people were busy with AIDS and RU486, but over the years we have heard from so many men, and they kind of fall into 2 groups. One of the groups is men who are a little older, 30s, 40s, 50s, and want to take responsibility. They've seen their partner go through a lot, or their wife, and if there's something better, they'll do it. And you think, okay, great, modern guy. There's this other set of men, mostly a little younger, and they want reproductive control. And it's easy as a woman to think, oh, rah, 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 and people get into this gender thing, but this is win-win. Men want to be able to know, like, I'm not going to end up not going to grad school because somebody forgot her pill on a romantic weekend, And the pill is not perfect. No, none of the female methods are perfect. So we try to take it beyond responsibility to choice, and as they say, autonomy. So it's distressing to see autonomy for women sliding away. And I know there are good people out there fighting hard, and we keep fighting on our little piece, which is to actually create better, long-acting, actually non-hormonal methods for men that are better than what's out there for women, which benefits everybody.
You know, it's important what I hear you say about, planning your life, and I think so many of the times it's really lost on us that it's not just about what's happening to your body, but literally what happens to your entire life. I mean, contemporary studies will show that a woman's ability to plan or delay or space apart childbirth helps her get an education, may make her forego an education, helps her get a job, helps with career planning, literally helps her earn the same kind of wages childless peers will, right? It keeps women off of public assistance. So it's really about her whole life, not just her body. It's like everything that she's going to be able to become or be. So it's really, that's what reproductive autonomy is.
And it's hard to believe, but the pill is about 60 years old. And we really saw the transformation of women finally being able to control when they were going to have a child. And I think now that we are in today's society, we don't remember that, how much judgment was associated with contraception. The access, even after it was, developed, women had to wear, wedding bands just to go to the doctor. And now we see the judgment coming back into public health. What are your concerns about that? How do we have to transform our healthcare system so that now that we see more erosion, whether it's the opportunity to access Plan B in a pharmacy, or the access issues regarding will she be safe in her own state to take the choices that she needs? What are your opinions on that?
Well, we provide funding for the development of non-hormonal reversible male contraceptives, like Elaine's foundation. And I think from our perspective, it's getting more men involved in the healthcare system. So one thing that we've been working on is if you look at the reproductive journey of women and egg producers, there are all of these significant reproductive milestones that are then tagged to healthcare related interventions. If you look at men or sperm producers, so I'm 45 years old, I've never been to a urologist. Have any of you met an andrologist in your life? So probably not. So andrology did not evolve at the same pace of gynecology, which really systemically puts the onus, it's one of the drivers of why there's this misperception of women as reproductive agents, men as just effectively sperm donors. And we need to ensure that in addition to innovations in products, there's also the healthcare system innovations so that men feel understand how their bodies work, they feel involved in this, they have places to go to ask questions about this. Right now we ask people, where do you go? It's like Google, or I ask my friends, or social media. TikTok is actually an amazing platform, but there's not a lot of control in terms of misinformation there. But we need to ensure that, and then beyond that, you look at like sexual education. So we need to make sure that men understand how their bodies work, what their role is in causing a pregnancy, or especially an unintended pregnancy, and then that way they will understand and appreciate and value the contraceptive methods we're developing and demand them. So really the reason why our vision is reproductive autonomy for all is to reframe what we're doing not as a product development or a funding agency, but as a social movement that everybody should get behind. So again, it's one of my oft-told jokes. My boss is here, so she's going to groan at this, I'm sure. But we're waiting for our Greta Thunberg, right? Where are the young advocates that are championing this, that are going to take this forward for us? So we also always joke that I'm just keeping the seat warm for the next young person who's going to say, yes, I get this, because the methods we're funding are in reality, 5 to 10 years away from being on the market at best. So today's youth is tomorrow's users of this. We need to engage with young audiences, improve their understanding of their sexuality, so that they are their own empowered advocates, that they can go out and say, it is criminally unfair that I don't have these methods. And men should be doing that for women, women for men, and everyone for non-binary people. So we all, it's, as Elaine said, it's not a his or hers, it's an ours. And we need to work together on that, break down those divisions that allow these systemic failures to persist.
And we saw after the policy change that there was an increase in potential for people seeking and searching about vasectomies. So Elaine, can you talk more about what you've seen in terms of the trends and how we can continue to talk about the male role and responsibility?
Yeah, definitely. Vasectomy is underutilized in the US compared to countries where it's actually paid for. And that's one place people can be active is it should be covered under the ACA. Why is it that a woman can go get herself cut open for $1,000 and that's covered, but a much simpler surgery for her partner is not covered? In some states, they've actually brought that forward, I believe, right. Yeah. So that's a really specific area, and MCI may be doing a campaign about that at some point, I imagine. The contraceptive we've been working on for a number of years is a polymer gel that's like a reversible vasectomy. And that's been part of the problem is men don't have a lot of choice. They have condoms, which are great and important in new relationships, but not everybody's favorite for the long run. And vasectomy, which is not reliably reversible. If you have, lots of $1,000 and good luck, then maybe yes, but it's not something that they counsel men to count on, you can just flip a switch. No. So I think we need something in between, and that's why we really favor the methods that are a physical block, like ours is a vaginal gel. You may have heard of it, although we've been pretty quiet lately as we've been looking for a partner. But and we also have a competitor called Contraline that's already in clinical trials in Australia. So as my colleague says, that validates the space. It means we're not just some crazies, the only people who think this is for real. But we have over 50,000 people, mostly men, on the list to hear about clinical trials for vaginal gel. So you often hear people say, "Oh, men would never use this." It's like, no, that's your grandpa. The men who are looking for and it's not your dad, because your dad was maybe a baby boomer and he maybe got a vasectomy because that's what the cool educated guys did in the 70s. At least quite a number of them. But the men who are looking for contraception now were raised by women my age. And yeah, sure, it's not all of them. There's a whole set of guys that's like, but there are the guys out there who I want control over my life.
Yeah.
And I think for the women in the audience, we can team up going forward over these years and decades that will be coming to get more choices on the market, saying, like you said, we're in this together. We put aside our anger about what happened in the past. We give this new set of men a fresh start, and we go forward together.
Nice. Yeah, I'll just build off of that to say, and one other change that is vitally important, and something that I wanted to make sure that we've communicated today and that everyone understands is how the regulatory bodies view risk with respect to, developing therapeutics, right? So with pregnancy prevention, it's viewed as a physical risk. Mm-hmm. So one of the motivations for us to focus on non-hormonal methods is the concern about when we start going into clinical trials, men cannot get pregnant. Therefore, there is no physical risk vis-a-vis a pregnancy, which is just crazy to think. So we may say, think about the Hippocratic Oath, first do no harm. So there is this opportunity or risk that somebody may say, well, you're impacting an otherwise healthy system for no physical benefit. So we have actually published a paper about reframing that as a shared risk. So we need to also understand, in the past, there have been clinical trials that were stopped because of side effects. And you see this constantly. As a communications person, I see articles all the time bemoaning, men can't handle the side effects. Well, the participants in those trials did not stop those trials. The safety boards did because of this misperception of risk. So these systemic things that drive the failure of more products, we need to address those. And Elaine was saying, we have condoms and vasectomy. we're looking at men as a monolith. Like, yep, here you go, guys. Everybody, this is one size fits all, works for everybody. But when you look at, again, the reproductive journey of women, choice changes. Interest and needs change over time. So that's why we have a profusion of all these different methods: IUDs, pills, patches, injectables. So one of our focal points is to ensure that we are putting funding into all of the methods that provide that portfolio of products for men as well. Because men, there was a survey, only 35% of men in the United Kingdom would take a daily birth control pill. And they were using that to say there isn't demand. Well, it just so happens that's the same exact number of women that take daily birth control pills. So it's this misinformation is insane. So we need to break that down and say, like, okay, I'm a, again, 45-year-old guy, like, I would love Vasil Gel or Contralines Apple. Like, the vaso-occlusive space is incredibly amazing. Would I have done that when I was 18? Probably not. But that's because my interests and needs change too. So we need to support that, and we need to encourage men to think about, like, right now it's hypothetical, but like, what are you interested in? Would you take a daily pill? Would you be interested in an injectable? So that once we actually have those products on the market, we move beyond the hypothetical and we can start building empathy with conversations in heterosexual couples about, what is your experience like? Geez, that sounds terrible. Why don't I take the burden on now? Or maybe we're both contracept. Or, so we have those conversations that currently don't exist. And I will use this, I'll use myself as an example. Before my wife, I don't think I ever had a meaningful conversation with a partner about what their experience with birth control was like. That is where we should start. So if we're not having the, outraged by this and hearing about all the negative side effects and why is it okay for you but not for me, then that systemic failure persists. And so, as Elaine said, it takes a collaborative effort. We need to work together, otherwise change ain't gonna happen.
But the greater ecosystem has to help. So you mentioned that there are a lot of options for women. If you count our new innovative product that came to the market in 2020, Phexxi, that's the 19th category of contraception, okay?
And that's
But they're not
non-hormonal as well, right?
That's non-hormonal. But the fact of the matter is, they're not all covered. So I love what you said, because it's about your lifestyle, and at different times of your life, women will require different contraceptives, right? Depending on what her lifestyle is or her medical needs, by the way. But it's not always covered by payers. And the contradiction that you bring up with the tubal ligation may be covered, but the vasectomy not, it's ridiculous, right?
Yeah.
And we really have to get payers on board. They don't comply with the Affordable Care Act. That's a whole nother topic. But I mean, there's a lot more that we could be doing, and we're not doing enough in the greater ecosystem of healthcare, for sure.
So we know that for women 18 to 49, avoiding pregnancy, or at least determining when they want to be pregnant, is very important to them. About 65% of females say they're using some form of contraception. Can you talk to us about what is on the horizon for innovation and why that is so important? Why do we need more choices?
Well, I'll take that one. We need more choices because of people's lifestyle. We just talked about there are different, people sometimes want to plan for their families. And you may not want to get pregnant right now, but you may want to in a few months. So putting in an IUD doesn't make a lot of sense, right? You're not going to put in and have a medical procedure and then have to have that reversed. For a lot of women who can't tolerate hormones, you might need something non-hormonal. So given that they have choices over their time, or an on-demand product like ours, you can easily get off of it because there are no systemic side effects. You use it one day, you don't have to, and you can get pregnant the very next day if you want, right? So it really does help you with family planning, and that's why it's important.
So as far as new options coming down the pike, so you already have a product on the market for women, right? A non-hormonal vaginal gel.
Yes, we do.
And you ran out of funding in the pandemic when you lost some people?
Not quite. No.
Okay, so
Phexxi came to the market.
Yeah.
I can tell you about Phexxi.
Yeah.
So Phexxi came to the market. It was approved during COVID in May of 2020 by the FDA. Very challenging time because you've got to get out to all the doctors and all the offices are closed. And so we delayed the launch, actually. When we picked up, we were also in a clinical study because Phexxi was going to have some additional indications. It looked like after the phase 2b that it prevented the transmission or was greatly instrumental in preventing the transmission of chlamydia and gonorrhea. Very effective. But the clinical study, due to enrollment in COVID, wasn't able to get over the hurdle in phase 3. So we've got this wonderful, though, contraceptive drug that is on the market called Phexxi. It is non-hormonal, it's on demand. It maintains the pH of the vagina, so you insert it a minute before sex, an hour before sex. And you can literally maintain the pH of the vagina. It allows the sperm will not enter into and swim up, right? So it immobilizes the sperm, is what it does. And so this barrier method works really nice. The gel works really nice because it doesn't allow the sperm to swim upstream. So basically, it also enhances sex because it works as a lubrication.
Sounds pretty good.
I want to talk about, and that speaks to equity as well, right? We know that 1/3 of contraceptive users say they're experiencing side effects from their current method, and that may or may not have an impact on compliance. So let's talk about equity in general. When we think about teens, we've made a lot of progress in reducing teen pregnancy over the last 30 years, about a 70% reduction. And that has allowed more girls to be able to get an education, to go to college, to get a higher paying job, to change and break the cycle of poverty. One of the things that I worry about in terms of being from a community of color is that, are we going to see some setbacks here? And I wanted to get your thoughts on not only equity in terms of gender, but who is most impacted by where we are policy-wise, and how can we move forward with looking at the future?
Yeah, I'll jump in on that. I think, going back to also what's in development and the need for a diversity of products, right? So as interests and needs change, we need to meet those changing needs. But in terms of equity, it's amazing to think about the United States, one of the most developed countries in the world. We have contraceptive deserts throughout the country. And it affects a lot of low and middle income communities especially. But if you expand beyond the United States and you look at how drugs are introduced in LMICs, something we're working on currently is simultaneous drug introduction across all markets. So we need to deprioritize the United States as the focal point, because that's where the profits are, and make sure that people, it's inequitable access and availability, and a lot of that's driven by pricing. So thinking about how do we not only develop these methods, but ensure people, once they are developed, have access to them. Like, it benefits no one to have, the 350 million people in America have sole access to these innovative new contraceptives, while the rest of the world, the other 8 billion people in the world, just sit and wait and go, I hope it gets here soon. So I think that's where we also need to think about the diversity of products in terms of what that means in production, the manufacturing and distribution of those products, because that will help us address the contraceptive deserts in the United States as well as throughout the world. So that diversity of products is not just for interests and needs, but also there's this kind of manufacturing component, which is important in thinking about how we get these into communities throughout the world.
Yeah, taking off from there, I would say, continuing on global access and community access, the contraceptives we have are not serving people perfectly, which leads to more unintended pregnancies. And we're not perfect in terms of maternal mortality rates, especially in low-income and communities of color. So this is lives lost that don't have to be, especially as abortion rights are challenged and removed. In terms of global access, what's happening in our space for male methods is a pretty good example of the choices that we have to make. We know that there is a very small pot of government funding for this research. There's some really dedicated people at NIH, but they have like this much money to work with, versus AIDS is this much funding and cancer is like this. And so everybody's fighting for this pie. Is it male? Is it female? You couldn't get government just here, have a check. We'd love a method that would women could take right before sex and they wouldn't get chlamydia. Yeah, that's not happening. In the male space, we have two methods that are both vas deferens-based polymer gels, One lasts longer, the one we've been working on, Vasogel, and one lasts shorter, Atom, which is designed to wear off after like 2 years. So that's going to be different populations. But they are going sort of pure play and counting on capitalism and VCs to make it happen. And we're going social venture. And after almost 30 years for me on and off working on this and collaborating with inventor of a previous method in India, we took a lot of time wanting to make sure we found this partner, Next Life Sciences, that would ensure community access in the US and also access in other markets where it makes sense. Like it's not every country are the men going to go, yeah, you know, but the ones where they are looking for something that means their wife might not die in childbirth, then go there. And if it costs $10 or $15 to make, you charge 15 or 20 there, just enough to cover your expenses, your safety registries. You don't charge $300 or whatever it is you're charging in the US, and you don't charge Planned Parenthood $1,000, like happened with the Mirena IUD, which probably some of you in the audience have, was developed with taxpayer money, the USAID funds, at the Population Council, a nonprofit, and got licensed to what was then Sharing, who said, don't you worry your pretty little heads about public access. We'll take care of that. And 10 years later, a couple hundred women in Guatemala had free IUDs. Meanwhile, the British government can't get them for less than 160, and those of you who got it, probably the tab was $1,000 now, because it's also indicated for heavy bleeding, and hysterectomy is the alternative for that. So this is better, right? So anyway, that's part of what people can do as far as activism, is keeping their eye on the prize, which is access, not just for you, but for other people too. So anything's going to help. I mean, great, go capitalism. You know, it would be great to get something to market, to get that regulatory process started, but let's keep our eye on access issues too.
Yeah, access is the big word. I mean, there are 20 million American women who don't have access to contraception. And you talked about this desert, but we both agree that there's a public health issue and a crisis here. There are a lot, at least for women. You know, we've got an innovative product, non-hormonal, that came on the market in 2020, 19th category. The other categories all exist, and there are good products, non-hormonal and hormonal, that are available to women today. The problem we have is that they don't have access. Payers continue to deny, right? They don't cover it at zero cost. That's ridiculous. Who was it who told me Viagra, within a few weeks of it being out, all the payers covered it, right? But we still fight to get coverage for contraception. It doesn't make sense. And so if you really treated it like a public health issue, and you gave this away for free, right? Imagine we bring down that unattended pregnancy rate. I mean, I look at it and I think, you know, we compare things all the time, but diabetes, right? It's an epidemic. We look at it, we know it's an epidemic. 1.4 million Americans are diagnosed with diabetes every year. That's men, women, and children all together. We throw money at it all the time. Payers are covering it. Pharmaceutical companies are developing drugs. I just saw an article 2 weeks ago where they slashed it in half. We send free kits so that people can test in their home conveniently, free test strips, all kinds of things we do, right? Unintended pregnancies, we talked about this, whether they're unintended or unwanted difference, but nearly half of them in the United States are unattended. Nearly half of the pregnancies. Do you know what that amounts to? That's nearly 3 million. That's way more than the amount of people that are diagnosed with diabetes every single year. But we're not throwing money at it, like you just said. Look at the funding available, right? And so even if you say we're not throwing money at innovation, which is wrong, and I love to see what they're doing because it's really important to get the men involved. But like, if you just give women access right now to what's available, that would help so much.
Absolutely. Well, and I wanted to touch upon the funding component of this too, as well as the pricing component, because I think there's a huge misunderstanding in terms of where funding for contraception research and development comes from. There was just a report came out the other day from a research organization in Australia that found our organization, Male Contraceptive Initiative, is the #6 funder of all contraception across all genders in the world. You're looking at two-fifths of our entire company. There's 5 of us. We put $1.5 million into labs every year. And that makes us the #6 funder in the world. Like, that is staggering. So if you'll permit me, I'll nerd out a little bit longer. That same organization also found between 2018 and 2020, a total of $257 million was invested in contraceptive R&D worldwide. The pharmaceutical industry accounted for 13 million of that, 13 million. So the pricing is based on this absolutely fallacious thinking that the pharmaceutical company has to recoup the innovation that they fund through their R&D efforts. That does not happen. So it is 48% of that funding comes from public funds, taxpayer dollars. 45% comes from philanthropic sources like Parsimus and MCI. So we need to stop just thinking about, oh, well, we have to price these because, oh, Pfizer needs to get their money back or whatever. They're not the investors in this. If you are a donor to an organization like MCI and you're an American taxpayer, you are funding contraception R&D, and then when that gets to market, you get the privilege you're entitled is to pay out a fortune to avail those products that you funded the development for. So that's what we need to understand. I think it comes down to, like I said before, conversations, but also education. Like, we need to get out there and really look at this and say, whoa, what is going on with this system, and why is this, like the access thing, you don't see that on the BBC headlines every day. Like, we need to get these things trending on social media. We need to be talking about this and understand, like, it's not just about our individual needs, but our collective needs and the collective impact that these methods will have.
So why do you think, given all that you all have said, that we're not looking at this as a country as a public health emergency, as a progress for women in our country emergency? What's holding us back here? And you all mentioned, VC funding has been tough. We saw after some of the movements and issues that happened in terms of disparities in our country, an initial influx on support for Black and brown biotechs, more support for femtech, but now we're starting to see some of that funding go away. What's going on here?
Well, we need what we're trying to do organizationally, and I think it speaks to what we should all be doing collectively, is to move beyond thinking about contraception as simply facilitating risk-free sex, and look at it as, so we have a whole section on our website. We research how increased contraceptives generally, but male contraceptives specifically, will help us address and meet all of the sustainable development goals. So, financially, it's something like $10.5 billion. If we eliminated unintended pregnancies in America, we would save like $10 billion a year in healthcare. It's something like $1,300 per taxpayer. It comes directly from that. So it's connecting contraception beyond just sex and to the other challenges that will help us address. And I think that's where you start coming into like, oh wow, this is a public health thing. This is a critically important missing piece of our public health toolkit.
Yeah, I think even beyond that, that's the logic of it, but I think it's gotten politicized. And,
of course.
And I almost think of it like gay rights and coming out as gay or lesbian or queer. Like, we were involved in helping the company survive that brought a more affordable abortion pill to market, and we'd never talked about it because we were afraid. And after the Dobbs, it's like, the time for being silent is over. Like,
It's over.
I'm a woman, I'm a citizen. It's, time to put aside fear and speak up as an affected party.
So beyond the Roe v. Wade decision, even more recently, we're seeing that some retail pharmacies are not offering the morning after pill as a result of political pressure. Can you talk to me about not only the loss of abortion rights, but now the encroachment onto contraception more broadly?
I think I could take that on.
Sure.
It's it's my state. That's one of the states, California, that's pushing back on that, and in possibly mostly a symbolic way, but I made a statement. And I know the people at the company who are suing the state of West Virginia, saying, "Hey, we have a federally approved product. You can't tell us we can't sell it in the United States of America." That's not how it works. That's what our federal agency has been making decisions for every 5 or whatever years for 15, 20 years. Like, they decided already. It's basically, so it's not outlawed to sell it in most of the states that complained. But Walgreens was scared, and they're like, okay, fine, we won't do anything to, like, we don't want to get in the middle of this. And then people on the other side said, wait a minute, it's a legal product, you have to sell it, you can't go wimping out. So that's where it stands.
Well, we often talk about, the power of an individual in a democracy. Like, you can speak with your vote and call your elected officials. There's things like that you can do to say, like, I don't agree with what you're doing. But we're also a capitalist society, so boycott the places that won't carry it. You don't have to shop at someplace, and you can get back to, again, social media, amazing platforms out there for amplifying messaging. Get out there and say, you know what, we're not going to shop at Walgreens until you start carrying this product. We want it and we need it, and it's unfair that you're denying us for this. So use that kind of profit motivation against people and start saying, you're going to start losing money if you don't provide these products to us, and watch how quickly they'll change their mind.
So one of the game changers for access to contraceptive was the Affordable Care Act. However,
for female contraception.
For female contraception.
For female contraception.
Yeah, at least. But Catherine, talk to us about, with the updates to the ACA and how birth control should be covered at zero cost, are insurance companies complying with these guidelines?
No. So short word, no. In theory, the Affordable Care Act was updated, right? So in July, after Roe v. Wade was reversed, the Department of Health and Human Services, along with the Department of Labor and the Department of Treasury, got together. They updated the Affordable Care Act as it pertained to my company, Evofem Biosciences, and our product, Phexxi. We were happy. We were happy to see that they were enforcing that anything that was FDA cleared or approved, that payers had to comply and covered at zero cost to women. Unfortunately, there were two things. They gave payers 6 months to comply, so by January 1. So you see us in a crisis, right? That this is just overturned, you see the trigger states, everything happening, and they're gonna give payers time to comply. So on January 1 came around, and by the way, I'm happy to say that a few of them complied, but not the biggest ones, not the ones who make billions of dollars. They are not complying. They continue to find loopholes, and it's really sad because the losers in this are the women. The losers are the children, right, who were born. It's just the taxpayers. You mention it. It's like, it's very, very costly. And it's sad, but they still do not comply. They find loopholes. I was going to talk about Phexxi before and trying to build broad awareness in a time when COVID happened, and then in this day and age where reproductive rights are being challenged. But even like anything with the government, just moves so slowly. So even for the Affordable Care Act, for years, before any of this even happened, we were fighting, right, for our own category. Not having a category on the charts was really detrimental to us. And if you could put up that counseling chart, that would be great. One of the things that we had to do, because the CDC and the FDA, so the FDA approves our product, a new category called vaginal pH modulator, and it doesn't actually change the charts. So they have not updated their contraceptive charts since 2011. And we were approved in 2020, and those charts are still not updated today. We had to make our own and start passing them out so that women and doctors could really have an honest conversation about all the options that are out there, including fertility tracking, so that people know non-hormonal versus hormonal, because it's not just what's medically best for you, but also what fits your lifestyle. And there are a lot of different options, and that's one of the things that we did just so that we could have a seat at the table. And then going back to the ACA, what also was happening is that the payers were using the chart as a loophole, saying, well, you're not on the chart. You don't have your own category. Your category's not up there, so we don't actually have to cover you. And that's why the ACA updated it and said, hey, if it's FDA approved, you have to. So you still have some of the bigger payers holding out, and I really don't know why with the crisis that we're in, because we all agree it's a public health issue. We all agree it's an epidemic. Why they continue to not cough it up. I'm not really sure. I mean, we don't get it.
Catherine, one question. I've heard some women say their insurer only will cover one item per category. Like we offer one hormonal IUD.
That is true.
So if you hadn't had your own category, is that an issue for you guys?
It could be. So fortunately for us, there's no competitor in this particular category, let's be honest. But, there are other new products that came to the market, not in their own new category, but certainly probably more enhanced or maybe a better version, right, with innovation. And they're not covered. Because payers are only forced, right, to cover something in each category, and they are picking and choosing. And so the sad part about it is, really, it should be what your medical provider deems is necessary, medically necessary for you, and the best option for you. And that decision is likely to be made by the payer and not a healthcare professional. And that seems ridiculous as well. That's what's happening.
Yeah. I want to ask you what we could do about that, but we'd be here till tomorrow. Going, I don't know.
Well, if you were in the last, what was interesting to me in the last session, somebody stepped up to the mic and said, our payer system is really wrong, and a lot of this could be rectified, right?
So we talked about how insurance and the approval process is a challenge. Why is it that women they can't just get a 12-month supply of what they need? Or why do they have to go to, secondary doctors or specialists to get access to contraceptive? Talk to me about the barriers that even to just get something very basic, we can't get it over the counter. What's going on now, and what's possible in the future? Where do you see us going?
Well, I can speak for our product that everybody says, why is this not an OTC? It's so basic. You use it on demand, you insert it before, but for us, it's really important that physician has that conversation, or the healthcare provider has that conversation with a female. Any misuse of any of these products, not taking it correctly, could result in an unattended pregnancy. You look at oral contraceptives, and if you don't take it at the same time every single day and you miss a day, it can result in an unattended pregnancy. And you really want to make sure you have that counseling discussion with a provider. So I do think that that's important. I don't know if I have any other suggestions on that, so I'll lean into Kevin or Elaine.
Yeah.
But I think that you just can't go over the counter with everything.
Well, I think that also, again, reinforces the need for a diversity of products. So if we, again, looking at our work, there's really 4 broad pillars in which you can meaningfully disrupt male fertility, right? So it's spermatogenesis, it's the creation of new sperm motility, their ability to swim, sperm transport, it's getting out of the body, and then fertilizing an egg. So there will be some that will require prescriptions. Are there other ways that we can, so we can work within the system to a certain extent, but we also need to look at opportunities to work around the system. So if we can disrupt the system, we can change it, fantastic. Otherwise, let's find workarounds. But again, it's like understanding, once we understand how male reproduction works writ large, we can really zero in on methods that we can kind of empower people to access without the need for, counseling is always important, but you have to go to a doctor for, this method if it doesn't require, if it's not doing some sort of systemic intervention. If it's only like switching off this one biomedical or biochemical process, great.
Yeah.
We would agree, but go ahead.
We've been talking about a lot of big systemic issues, the payer system, the government, but some men are taking things into their own hands.
Sure.
And so some of this is less remote in terms of what we can actually do now. You can give to organizations like theirs. Mm-hmm. You can get philanthropist types or VCs, to tell them about the male contraceptives in the 2 that are actually pretty far along in development. Actually, there's also a pill that's been in the news that seems pretty promising. It's not a hormonal thing. Yep. And then in France, some guys just got tired of waiting, and somebody designed a ring that you can use as a testicular contraceptive because, and now people are going to go la 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 because actually talking about body parts, yes, it's contraception. But if you elevate the testes into the inguinal canal and hold them there, they're actually a little too warm to properly produce sperm. Yeah. And so guy just developed a silicone ring and started selling it for, 20, 30 euros. Mm-hmm. And the heck with you guys, we are the new generation. We want control over our fertility, and we're doing this. And eventually they got shut down, and now they're trying to raise money to go legit with it. But it's possible. it works. So
there's several things we need to do. One, and our executive director, Heather Vidal, is sitting right here. She often says that she'll have it inscribed on her tombstone that, yes, men are interested in birth control for them, you know? So it's these persistent notions that are not borne out in data, that men aren't interested, female partners in a heterosexual relationship won't trust their partners to take contraception, and that it's too difficult to do because, oh, men produce 1,500 sperm per second. Well, the science is there, the demand is there, the trust is there. We are just about to release an international market research study that we co-funded with the Gates Foundation that looked across 7 different countries. So you've got as diverse as like Bangladesh, India, Nigeria, the Ivory Coast, the United States. So there's always this notion of like, oh, male birth control, that's a Western thing, only American. No, it's not. Everyone across the world, it's the researcher, our partner who designed the study. Sorry, I'll wrap this up in just a second. He's been working in the pharmaceutical industry for 30 years doing market research. He has never seen any product with such latent demand as male birth control. So the demand is there. We need to put that to rest and just give people the products that they need.